Hey, welcome to Wonderwell. Those of you who are here, welcome to Dharma Sunday. Everybody online, and happy Father's Day to all the fathers. I have the feeling that's why we maybe have a smaller group here today because it's Father's Day. Um, I think I see some people who maybe have never been to Wonderwell before. Is that true? Yes, a few. Well, welcome. And Dharma Sunday is our weekly gathering on Sunday morning, and the progression of events is as follows. We will do some meditation practice together for the first 40 minutes or so, guided meditation. Then we'll have a break, 15-minute break, and we'll come back and then I'll give, I guess, share some thoughts with you for today and leave some time for some connecting, I hope, at the end of that time. Some comments, questions, conversation. I'd love to hear your voices and not just my own. And that includes everybody online, so we can go back and forth between people here in Wonderwell and folks who are online, which is one of the beautiful capacities of this hybrid system. And by the way, my name is Liz. I'm one of the guiding teachers for Natural Dharma Fellowship. And I live about 10 minutes away from here in Grantham with my husband, who's right here. And was very happy to wake up this morning and feel the fresh, cool air and see a little bit of blue sky. It feels like we've had a lot of gray recently. So we're going to start with taking refuge, which for those of you who are not familiar with this practice, I think probably everybody is, but if you're not, it's a little practice of essentially turning our attention towards and beginning to pay attention to what it would mean to really recognize ourselves as interconnected with everything and step past the limitations of the individual small self and remember our expansive self that is always in harmony with and has its place in the fabric of everything. So in a sense, when you take refuge, the traditional mode of taking refuge is about taking refuge in what we call the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. But the way I like to think about it is that it's a way of remembering our interbeing with everything. If you want to have it broken down, the Buddha then is sort of like the vast mind, the vast space, the universal interconnectedness. And the Dharma, then the teachings of the truth of how things actually are that are always available to us through the teachings of the historical Buddha, but also just through our life experience. We come into contact with what's actually true about being human and what we experience, what we go through. And then in the Sangha, which is the community of others who are engaging in remembering who we really are. So we'll start with that, and everyone should have a prayer book in here, and we have slides for folks online. This on page 1. We'll start with that. We'll also do the prayer at the bottom of page 1, pure perception and bodhicitta. And then on the top of page 2, we'll do the 4 immeasurable aspirations, which is a prayer of inviting transformative energy into the world. And I'll say more about that later on this morning, but I think not that prayer in particular, but this notion of inviting transformative energy into the world, that's actually something we have the power to do. And these prayers help to formulate and direct that energy. So we'll start with those three, and then we'll go into some practice together. Okay. And we usually do the Tibetan and then the English. So Sanjay Chudang Sochi Chonam La Changche Padu Dani Chapsuchi Dagi Jinso Jipe Sonam Chi Drola Penchir Sanjay Drupar Show. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we go for refuge until enlightened. By the power of generosity and the other perfections, may we realize Buddhahood for the benefit of all. I and all beings are primordially Buddha. Knowing this to be true, I am aligned with supreme enlightened mind. Semchen Tamche Dewa Dang Dewe Judang Denpa Jurchi Dungao Dang Dungao Ji Judang Drelwar Jurchi Dunga me pe dewa dampa dang min drelwar jurchi Nyering chak dang dang drelwe tang nyom se me pala ne pa jurchi. May all beings possess happiness and the inner causes of happiness. May all beings be free from sorrow and the inner causes of sorrow. May all beings remain undivided from the sacred joy which is free from sorrow. May all beings come to rest in the great equanimity beyond attachment or aversion to friends, enemies, or strangers. So just take a moment to allow yourself to find a comfortable position, whatever that is for you this morning. Just want to have your spine upright but relaxed. And your gaze can be open, maybe just a little bit opened. You can rest the gaze on the floor in front of you, maybe 2 to 3 feet, keeping a very soft and unfocused gaze. Or if you like, you can actually have your eyes closed for a little bit anyway. I might ask you to open them later, but for now. I'm just going to begin by taking a moment to inquire into your own being with this question of how am I right now? And when you look into this question with yourself, you might ask yourself that on the level of how is my body? How is my heart? How is my mind? And how is my spirit? So take a few moments and do a little bit of self inquiry into this question of how am I right now? Just noticing whatever you notice, but without trying to change it or make it any different. Just seeing what's there in your body, your heart, your mind, and your spirit. And whatever you notice, allowing those parts to just be here with you, feelings or thoughts or sensations, different energies of your being, just letting them all be present with you here in this moment, just as they are. You could even remind yourself that all of you is welcome here, welcome in this moment, in this place, in this body. And now allow your attention to drop down through the body and come to rest with whatever sensation you notice where your body meets the cushion or the chair. And then letting your awareness merge with whatever sensation you notice there. It might just be a sensation of pressure or warmth, tingling, seeing how much you can become one with that sensation. Whenever you notice that you've become distracted and taken away by thoughts, allow that sensation at the base of the body to draw you back to it like a magnet, grounding in the base of your being. Now allowing your awareness to expand, you begin to become aware of the feeling of your breath, feeling of the breath as it flows into the body and as it flows out of the body, merging your attention with the feeling of the body breathing. Riding the river of your breath. And again, whenever you notice that you've become distracted, allow the feeling of the body breathing to draw you back into oneness with it, flowing with the river of your breath. Now allow your awareness to expand beyond the seeming boundaries of the body so that you are becoming aware of not only sensations in the body and the feeling of the breath, but aware of the space in whatever room you're in, aware of sounds that may be occurring in that space, aware of smells. If your eyes are closed, you might want to open them a little and allow in some color, light, shape, becoming aware of whatever's present in the field, your visual field, expanding that sense of being to include the fullness of your experience. Let yourself become the space that holds the fullness of your experience, just as it is. And see how much you can allow all that you are to be held in the space of your awareness, welcoming it just as it is. We're going to take a 15-minute break. And please feel free to have some tea. Have some tea at home, tea, coffee. But please do stay in silence, and we'll rejoin again at 11 o'clock. There'll be a gong here at Wonderwell, and everyone at home, you're on your own. To be back at 11. Thank you. All right, I think most everyone is back. I can't quite tell on the screen because if people have their cameras off, then you don't show up on my end. But in any event, we'll keep going. So this morning, I wanted to share some thoughts with all of you just around something that I've been thinking a lot about recently. And it started with my husband was talking to a friend who's a psychotherapist. And he was saying how it would be a miracle if any of us had come through our lives this far with a sense of feeling, without a sense of fragmentation, being fragmented. And it really caught my attention. I just thought, he was saying, for a variety of reasons, so many reasons, and many of them very specific to each individual, but also just the more general ethos and cultural context in which we've grown up, in which there's so much splintering of our attention and of our playing multiple roles, being bombarded on a daily basis with all kinds of information, misinformation, opinions, options, noise. That there's just this sort of, my sense is it's this splintering effect, fragmenting effect, that not only our attention is fragmented, but potentially also our sense of just contentment and okayness and ease in the world. It's hard to find a kind of flow that stays steady with that. And that it can feel really difficult to hold the entire picture of everything that's going on. So much is going on in our world right now, and just in this country alone, right? Never mind being able to have a sense of clarity around what we're being exposed to. What's true, what's not true, what's happening, what's not happening. There's in some sense, there's even seemingly deliberate attention towards breaking down any sense of what's factual and what's not, which is all the more confusing and splintering. But I think in general that our cultural context supports this living a divided life. That there's this long habit of distraction, which is encouraged even more by our entertainment industry and our phone situation and our computer and all of our devices, right? These weapons of mass distraction. And then there's just the fragmentation around the relationship to oneself. Who am I? And what am I doing in this world? And how should I be? And, this person, the influences of this direction, from this direction, and the influences from this direction, and the expectations from within and the expectations from without. There's a lot. We're navigating a lot. We don't live in a simple world. And I've been really feeling this. And there are times when I feel like I'm kind of walking along the edge of a razor blade, or maybe a tightrope. I don't know. It doesn't have to be a razor blade, but in other words, something where there's two different sides, two different possibilities, two different directions in which I could be facing in my life. And on the one hand, with everything that's going on in our world, and particularly for me, the climate situation and what's happening with the planet, is really, really a challenge to hold. But I can find myself kind of veering into this energy of fear and apathy and sadness and despair. Um, a sense that I'm sort of staring into this void of meaninglessness. Like what means anything really? What is it? What makes this life meaningful? That I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm engaging in this activity and that activity, but what does it all really mean? Like, why am I really here? Uh, and I can get into this place where things start feeling kind of empty. This is, and not in a good way, empty in a kind of void way, like this life is just this kind of vague gesture in the dark that will soon cover everything. Sounds like depression, doesn't it? um, and when I face that direction, if I let myself face too far into that direction, then it feels like my life is sort of this tunnel into loss and grief and looming sense of destruction and the having to give up my comforts and my habitual way of being okay. And I keep thinking, how soon is this coming for me? How soon is it coming for all of us? What would it take for this world as we know it so far, as we've lived it so far, to change so radically that we would be hard pressed to survive? I don't think it would take very much, actually. And I went down to, the other day, I drove down to Manchester to meet up with my mom, who was having an appointment with a cardiologist. But I took her to the grocery store because she needed to do some shopping after that. It was a Wednesday. And it was so interesting. Like the grocery store was like half empty. And I don't mean people, I mean the aisles of food were like empty in a very obvious kind of way. And I thought, okay, usually sometimes if you go to the grocery store after the weekend, yes, stores, supplies are low. This is like midweek. And maybe it meant nothing. Maybe, the supply truck broke down on the way or something, but it felt like I just got caught in this feeling like this is some kind of omen. There are so many more people living down there in the Manchester, Nashua area. And, it's not that crowded up here yet. So I haven't seen that kind of thing up here as much. But there's just this feeling of sort of like, what would it take if supply chains broke down? Oop, sorry, cut out there. See, what would it take? If supply chains broke down and suddenly there was no food in the grocery stores, what would most of us do? If you don't have your own garden and you're not growing your own food, you don't have your own farm, how do we feed ourselves? What happens if the grid goes down and we have no more electricity? I mean, it's all it would take to change things radically. So I get into this like space where I'm like, okay, all of these things, like just feels like things are fragmenting even more. So I thought, all right, I'm gonna look into this idea of fragmentation. What does it really mean? And how could it be held within the context of this life and a spiritual journey? And so I looked up the word fragmentation because I like doing this. I like looking up words and finding their etymologies and where they came from, and because there's always something interesting in that. So this isn't as interesting, but of course, fragmentation, there's this notion that something has broken into multiple pieces, different parts that may be at odds with each other. So there can be conflict within oneself, for example. And then if you look into the field of psychology, there are descriptions of the notion of a fragmented self, which is this feeling that somehow the self is not a unified entity, which in fact it's not, but instead it's a collection of different elements, many different elements. If you think of the IFS system, different parts, that we all are this mix of different parts. And yet there's a kind of permeating environment of, I guess in that psychotherapeutic model, they say self-energy, or in the Buddhist tradition, we might say awareness. But I think that the world that we live in gives rise even more to this sense of fragmentation because of the speed and the busyness, because of the responsibilities that we have, lots of multiple sources of pressure, um, and multiple roles. Many of us are playing many different kinds of roles in our lives as well. I remember one of my professors at Harvard when I was doing my graduate work, he was really discouraged because he felt that the increasing addiction that people had to their devices was destroying students' capacity to concentrate one-pointedly on specific tasks. And he was a professor of Tibetan language, a very, very brilliant man who, I mean, he's still alive, but he, like in his classes and for his homework assignments, you had to really focus. And he's like just the wealth of knowledge and insight that he's had because of his capacity to stay so one-pointed in his studies is remarkable. And I could feel it in myself, like I couldn't do that. I did not have the capacity to focus the way he could. And actually, this whole notion, though, of a fragmented self, it's been explored, it's been worked, it's been thought about through by lots of different Western philosophers in Western philosophical tradition, and in many different traditional cultures that have different rituals, soul retrieval rituals, fractured, where there's literally like practices and rituals and ceremonies that are engaged in for somebody who is experiencing some kind of sense of fracture, to pull the pieces of that being, that person, back together and help integrate them into the whole again. And I think that actually addressing this experience of fragmentation is at the heart of the Buddhist path. And if you look into some of the Buddhist teachings on suffering in particular, you see that the sense of fragmentation that we experience arises from a condition of ignorance that is known as the causal ignorance of single identity. The causal ignorance of single identity. So what's that? When I saw that, I was like, that is. So what that means is that because we have this mistaken belief in a self that is separate from everything else, we have splintered off from the whole. We've fragmented away from the whole. And it's considered to be actually at the root of our suffering. There are different forms of ignorance that the Buddhist teachings describe as the root of our suffering. But this one, this causal ignorance of single identity, is actually at the very, very root. And it's really a label for our failure, I guess, to see the interconnectedness, the unity, the wholeness that underlies all of this sense of seeming separateness. So that's kind of one side of that razor blade. But that's not where I want to leave this talk. Because the other side of this razor blade or tightrope or balance beam, whatever I want to call it here, is this path of recovering wholeness and returning to interconnectedness as an experience, as a direct experience. And it's a deliberate reorienting, to seeing and experiencing this life as a process of returning to wholeness and to meaning and to purpose. So when you start looking into these words, completeness or wholeness, again, like I like doing this, so you have to put up with me, but that when you look into the etymological meaning of the word completeness, it has to do with filling up, something being filled up, or it's consummated, filled. Um, Complete, the word pele, I'm not sure how you would pronounce that, but it means to fill. And so there's a sense of abundance, multitude, but multitude held in wholeness. Um, and so wholeness or completion in this case means that everything is present. Nothing is left out. Nothing has to be exiled or alienated from our experience. Everything is held. Everything is contained within that. Even our most challenging states of mind or heart or body are part of the wholeness. They really are part of the wholeness. And then the journey is to begin to walk back to that wholeness. And I think some of you know that I've been doing this sort of exploration of excuse me, working with South American plant medicine ceremonial traditions and Buddhist meditation, and looking at the intersection between these paths and the insights that both provide. And one of the things I've discovered in some of these traditional plant medicine ceremonies is that my experience at least is that there's a kind of imperative, maybe that's not quite the right word, but that there is a choicelessness to having to experience everything that you are, everything. You don't get a break. You don't get to leave some things aside. You're brought face to face with the fullness of your being on every level. And that can be incredibly intense and hard. And yet there is a wholeness, and I think this is where the support of a practice history, a meditation history, is incredibly helpful, because if one has the ability to hold the space of one's own experience, like I had you doing at the end of the meditation, then whatever is unfolding in these ritual spaces can be held, can be integrated, can be entered into in a very direct experience way. It's not just theoretical, not just about thought at all, very much direct experience kind of situation. And so I have found myself in those contexts being presented with or encountering the parts of myself that are in grief, or that have experienced loss, or that will experience loss, and other forms of suffering. And it's a pretty choiceless situation. You just have to go right into that energy and be with it and surrender and hold that experience, that vastness. And there's, for me at least, over time, there's been this recognition that actually those energies, the energies of loss, of love, of grief, of suffering, of sadness, are all part of the whole. The whole includes the light and the dark, the ups and the downs, the sorrows and the joys, the griefs, the losses, the delights. Everything is included, the gratitude. So when we can experience, I think, wholeness in a very palpable way like that, then there's within that the capacity to relax, and relax enough that there's no more resistance to whatever's unfolding in the fullness of this situation. So there's a, I want to kind of riff a little bit on this notion of fullness then. You know, if one direction of this balance beam is kind of towards a sense of voidness, again, not in a good way, not the emptiness that the other direction is really facing into the fullness of life, which in my opinion is a much better translation for the traditional uh, explanation in Buddhist philosophy of emptiness, that it's about fullness. And that our experience of this life is so full, incredibly full. Everything is present. Everything is present. All the visual forms that are in your field of vision are present. Sounds, sensations, smells, thoughts, feelings. What's not there? There's nothing left out. It's all there, right? It's all there. It's all arising. This life is so full, completely full. It includes the sky, it includes the trees, it includes the plants and the animals, the clouds. It includes, you know, all of our idiotic movements of, maybe I should say, of the human race, but it also includes the colors of a rainbow. So every feeling, every emotion, every thought, all a part of this fullness. I think there's this fantasy that maybe, I think I had at least, romantic fantasy, that if I achieved at some point some degree of freedom, just a whole nother question, but that if we awake, there will be no longer any suffering. We'll transcend suffering. We'll no longer experience suffering. But I don't think that's true anymore. I think that whatever is meant by this notion of awakening on the path is that what we might actually be able to transcend is the struggle that and the resistance we feel to those aspects of our experience that we would like to say are unpleasant or uncomfortable. And that there would be an embrace and an openness and a willingness to hold both what is we call uncomfortable and what we call comfortable, without bias, without so much sense of preference. I want this and I don't want that. Again, when the Buddha was teaching on different forms of suffering, he was describing how the human birth flows along these four rivers of suffering: birth, aging, sickness, and death. And that there really isn't any option to be free from those. You don't get that choice. We don't get that choice. If we're going to be human and on a path, no choice. I mean, maybe we can be free from sickness. Maybe. Then that would be very lucky. But we're still going to have the other three at some point. At some point. We already had birth. And we're having aging. At least I am. And then sickness and death. So we don't get to escape these experiences of being alive and being human. In fact, they're one of the precious reminders that this life is so amazingly precious and brief and ready to be appreciated, open to being appreciated. So I think this notion of wholeness or completeness is about feeling into every energy that makes us up as fully and completely as we possibly can, not holding back, noticing when we're resisting because it feels uncomfortable or unsatisfying or frightening, or we just don't want to feel that way. Working with this bias, this preference for one experience over another, which is so much of where our struggle unfolds on the path, in our lives altogether. I think that's really a deep place of practice for all of us, is to work with this habit pattern of preference I want to feel this way and I don't want to feel that way. It doesn't mean that we don't do whatever we can to change and heal the situations that might be causing us a lot of suffering. But it just means that in the moment of experiencing a feeling of grief or a feeling of fear, that there's a willingness to be present with that feeling, to allow it to be part of the whole and not something that's been exiled or alienated or pushed out because it doesn't feel good. So that's why I tend to start meditation these days with those questions. How am I right now? Because that's the working ground. And whether that moment of nowness in which we're discovering how we are includes a past that moves up into the present moment or not, it's still this present moment and what we have on the plate to work with right now in our practice. You don't get something else. So when we're paying attention to how am I right now, we feel all of the different dimensions of what's unfolding in us. And we bring that into the practice. We can. I think when we really can taste the fullness of our experience, we're tasting what in the tradition, the Buddhist tradition, is known as co-emergence. Co-emergence. It's when we can't separate our experience into separate categories anymore. That there's a unified experience, a oneness, a state of being that is participating in the wholeness of this life without any bias whatsoever. Can we really experience ourselves as this kaleidoscope of wholeness, this unique, interpenetrating merging of energies that are coalescing and dissolving, coalescing and dissolving? Because you're not I keep saying this, you're not a noun, you're a verb. We're verbs. So I think it means that we start riding that razor's edge. On the one side, there's the struggle and the difficulty and the fear, maybe, and the meaning. On the other side, there's this wholeness. And at some point, these are coming together in a way that gives rise to an experience for which there is no language beyond words. So in order to facilitate that kind of being in the world, I still keep coming back to this idea of inquiry, inquiring into how am I right now? And then not only that, but why am I here? Why am I here on this planet at all? Why are we here at this moment? Why are we here? And when I really think about it, and this is sort of the antidote to that feeling of like voidness, I really don't see any other reason to be here unless it's to love this world and everyone in it as much as possible. To bring love, to bring healing, to bring joy, bring a sense of meaning to beings, to care about our planet and about the survival of our species, all species, human and non-human. Nothing else really feels like it has much of a point to me. I don't care about, going on vacation or buying another car or getting so what? We've all done that anyway. Enough, right? I mean, what else are we doing here? Why are we here if not for that? So I feel like to practice wholeness is to really offer, to offer all that we are, on the altar of love. To keep dissolving that habit pattern of self-focus, um, again and again, into the fullness. I mean, not to say that there's something wrong with the sense of individuality, because we need that in order to be in relationship. Well, it's part of what being in relationship is all about. But to remember that actually we're always connected to this vaster whole, this source that is much bigger than just the individual. And I was reminded when I was thinking about this of that Hopi prophecy, which we've read many times here. Like Willa and I got totally obsessed with it, but there's one line in it that I really love. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. Okay, I think we have to take that seriously, actually, and really think about what that means, right? It's not just this pretty romantic statement left over from this ancient indigenous people. It feels like this is an important message for this time that we live in, which maybe seems surprising, but it does feel to me like it really is. And another one of my friends who is a healer talks about an antidote to getting caught in this miasma of fragmentation and despair, to think beautiful thoughts, sacred thoughts, which sounds kind of like, okay, and is that really going to do anything to shift my mood or my feeling or my, like, really? But then how do we know if we don't try? So it seems like we have this choice, right? We can fall down this dark tunnel of, especially, of indignation and outrage and despair and loss and urgency, or we could shift our focus and choose to engage in this life with love and cultivate sacred view, sacred presence, sacred action. So I'm going to say something about what that means. What does it mean to cultivate sacred view? It's one of the primary requirements of the Vajrayana path of Tibetan Buddhism. You commit to holding sacred view as part of entering that path. It's your primary vow, actually, that you make, to hold the view of the world as sacred. I mean, think about that all the time, all the time. And this word sacred, it means to make holy, to dedicate. And there's a sense in that it requires exertion on our end. It requires us to exert ourselves in order to recognize the world as sacred and this life as sacred. It's not a given that we're going to automatically feel or think that way, which I think is very, very interesting, that it's actually up to us. And we have the option, we have the choice. We can shift our focus. We can place our attention in ways that remind us of beauty, of love, of connection, of completeness, of wholeness. We can deliberately turn towards this way of perceiving and experiencing. Will we manage to do that all the time? No. And actually, in the Vajrayana path, they say you're going to break this vow as many times as you remember to keep it, because it's not easy to do. But the point of taking the vow at all is that you then have to come back. When you find yourself, you've fallen into despair, you've fallen into aggression, you've fallen into judgment, you've fallen into hatred, you pull yourself back. You turn your orientation back. it takes this conscious, ongoing effort, because it's really not our default mode of perception. Our habitual pattern is so interesting, is to see the negative, the broken, the fragmented, and to kind of muddle around in that. Well, I mean, that's why why is it that the news feeds us primarily the negative? Primarily the negative. I mean, obviously you can find sources of news, thank God, that aren't doing that, but most of them, I mean, why isn't that we're not being shown the sacred and the whole and the positive? So I have been asking myself, and I'm going to put it as a question to all of you, what would it mean for you to do things in a sacred manner, um, to celebrate, as that statement goes? And can we construct modes of attention and action that not only recognize but help to create sacred space and presence and energy in our lives? How would you do that? What would you do? I think that's true that this planet, our Mother Earth, does not want only our tears and our outrage, right? She also wants our love and our joy and our celebration. She wants to be seen in her wholeness too, and not just in her brokenness, as every human being, every being does, right? Not just the planet. All of us need to be seen in our wholeness by ourselves and by everyone else. That's one way to uphold sacred view. And then another way, one of the roots of the word sacred is a word that I'll never be able to pronounce because I can't even tell if that's a letter, but like sake, something like that. It means ceremony or ritual. And, so rituals, we're so denuded of rituals in this culture, but when we actually perform rituals, when we work with ritual, we are recreating the natural order of the universe. That's a definition of what a ritual is meant to do. We're reweaving ourselves back into the fabric of reality, into the fullness, into the wholeness. Rituals are meant to weave us back into wholeness, to bring us back to wholeness. And we get to experience the wholeness that arises in ritual when our soul recognizes its real place in the world. So you might think about, what are your daily rituals? Is it just, stumbling out of bed in the morning to the cup of coffee? Right? What kinds of rituals do you engage in on a daily basis? And are they rituals that enforce a sense of sacredness and appreciation and gratitude? Or are they rituals that further our usual habits of who knows what? Could be anything. And could we learn to, or could we begin to incorporate perhaps some other methods, other rituals that would bring us closer to sacred view? Again, it does take effort, right? And I'm going to stop at a minute here because I want to leave some time for connecting, but it takes effort to cultivate and generate and perform ritual. But rituals can be very, very short, very short. And there are lots of examples across our planet of ritual practices that have been engaged in for centuries. And I feel like we could explore some of those examples, and maybe something would resonate. And you would think, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try starting my day with that, or I'm going to try ending my day with that. Maybe we do need to imitate people who have been living in sacred connection for hundreds, thousands of years. Many, many indigenous peoples of this world who've been doing that. And, I know there's this question of cultural appropriation, but in our personal life, in our daily life, I somehow don't think that those people would mind if we borrowed a ritual of such beauty and power to help shift and change the energy of this world. So my point is just that we have to actually exert ourselves in the direction of cultivating and holding sacred view, because it's not our habit pattern. Because the karmic energy of selfing and all about me and what I want is very strong. So taking action in a different direction is like taking the action to sit down on your cushion every morning and practice, or every evening, or at some point. That's a ritual right there. A ritual towards sacredness, right? That is a ritual. But it builds momentum. The more that we do it, there's more momentum, there's more force, and the wind of sacred view starts pouring into our sails and carrying us into the ocean of wholeness. None of this is to deny that there is other work to do in the world. It's just to balance a little bit that powerful pull, which to me feels like a very strong downward pulling energy that is coming through a lot. Can we actually, let's also remember that we can pull the other direction. And that maybe that's part of why we're here at this time, is to remember that we can. And more and more may join when that river, the stronger that river becomes, the more it will pull people in, beings in, and maybe transformation is possible. So I think I'm going to stop there and open this up. If anyone has thoughts, comments, anything you'd like to share, I'd be happy to hear. And we'll go back and forth between people in the room, if there's anyone in the room, and then people online, if anyone online. I do see a hand going up online. Or maybe we'll start there.
Go ahead, Peter.
It's Peter. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Liz. So nice to see you. Absolutely a delight, a pleasure. I can't tell you how many points of inspiration I connected with while you were speaking. All the different experiences, the emotions that I was experiencing, I can't possibly put in words, but I'm going to try to just capture some of them. Let me begin with just this whole notion of fragmentation. Um, I heard something by one of the founders of Ben and Jerry's, and they were talking about the $100 billion going into research for new nuclear weapons, like we need them, and thinking about all the defense budgets. Instead, if we could simply allocate a tiny fraction of them to relieve the physical and emotional needs of everyone in the world, we could go a long way toward restoring the fullness of our human potential. And it also reminded me, and I could so appreciate your deep description of emptiness. I've never heard that described in that manner, but I think I glimpsed a little bit of it yesterday. Uh, the fragmentation is so well known, and I am no exception to that. I've been lost in grief, in anger, in hatred, in rage, and just downright despair. Yet, what I experienced yesterday was something that was so life affirming. I was at a protest in Princeton, New Jersey, and there were between 3,000 to 5,000 people gathered there. And the feeling of communion with them, the sacred and the celebration was just palpable. Uh, even if there were counter protesters, I cannot see any one of them engaging in any kinds of violence. It was something that we just wanted to embrace, regardless of the outcome. It doesn't matter what actually transpired. This was an emotion, a driving force in that moment. And I am so happy to have been a part of it, to know that, if we as a people all over the world cared about our planet, looked where we are headed toward, and where we could apply all the potential that we have on this planet. Now we could change the trajectory of our existence for all people going forward. And your talk really inspired so many points of inspiration for me, and I'm so appreciative that I appreciate Dharma, the Natural Dharma Fellowship, for everything that is done for me, the folks like Andrea and Rylan, and I absolutely wish you all the very best, and I am so grateful. Thank you.
So good to see you, Peter. I thought about this too, this talk in relation with all the protests yesterday, and that sense of wholeness, people holding a full vision of something that could communicate, hopefully communicate. But thank you so much, Peter. Thank you for those beautiful thoughts. Anyone in here? Yeah.
Just a reminder, this is being recorded and we can't edit out discussion, and just say your name and hold up the mic. Kathy Lowe here. When you asked what can we do that is sacred, right? What I got from your inspiration today, with something else I was thinking about, is when I meet somebody, I'm probably more apt to say, oh, can you believe the news today? Like start with some kind of negative edge thing, or say, I heard you had a surgery, how's it going? Or, just stuff that doesn't start us in uniting in joy.
Mm.
And when people ask me or come to me with that, then I feel really fragmented and unconnected to the person.
Mm.
So this is teaching me now to be more conscious of when I say the first words to someone I meet, to make it really connecting and joyful, and not about the negative, edgy, bad thing that we could just start with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to start with that.
Right.
Yeah, and I was thinking too about labeling things when you talked about the razor edge.
Right.
There's the grief and the anger on one side. And I know that when I label things, because I'm not so enlightened yet, is that, oh, there's that bad feeling, and then my left brain takes me into that experience, and I can feel the tension in my body. But I love what you said, that as we practice this, it's an experience that really has no words.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I just love that suggestion that you just made of one way of practicing in this, and especially because you made it it's a relational practice that you suggested, a relational ritual. I love that. Yeah, thank you.
I'll say too that I'm believing more that it's about coming back to the human connection that I know I need more of, and if we all did that, how it would raise the vibration on the planet.
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful. Okay, we'll go back and then we'll come back to the room, but first to our screen, our virtual realm.
Hello, Lama Liz. Thank you.
Hi, Elida.
Hello. Just wanted to offer one of my morning rituals that is very short and very easy. And I actually got it from one of you or Lama Willa, I don't know, but it's from Thich Nhat Hanh. And it goes, brushing my teeth, rinsing my mouth, I vow to speak purely and lovingly. When my mouth is fragrant with right speech, a flower blooms in the garden of my heart.
Oh, thank you, Alan. That's beautiful. And thank you, Thich Nhat Hanh,
Yeah.
who, by the way, also, if you're looking for ideas for rituals, Thich Nhat Hanh has many, many, many beautiful rituals. Yes.
Hi, my name is Nina Kozane,
Hi.
and thinking about the rituals, um, my thoughts were that first acknowledging our own sacredness as we look in the mirror in the morning and giving thanks for that. And I used to do this, but I'm reminded that this is a very good way to practice. As I shower, I thank each part of my body for what it does for me as a gift.
Hmm.
Thank my hair for protecting my scalp. I thank my hands for being able to hold and touch people, and going down through your whole body as a ritual. And the more we could see the sacredness in ourselves, the more we could see the sacredness in others.
Thank you. That's also a beautiful description of a ritual. And I wonder if it could go both ways too, that if we have trouble seeing the sacredness in ourselves, that if we can consciously make an effort to see the sacredness in something that is seemingly outside of us, that also becomes a mirror in the same way that seeing it in ourselves becomes a mirror for seeing it in all others. Yeah, thank you. Back to our Zoom realm.
Christine.
Thank you for that wonderful talk. I really enjoyed it.
Hi, Justine.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Hi. So I'm of Irish and Scottish descent. So when I go into feeling like how you were describing about the scarcity and the how depressing it is, I start to think to myself, well, this is like this thought is, if I consume this thought and I let it rattle around too much, it's like eating junk food. It's like eating Halloween candy for a meal.
Right.
So, and I know what happens to me when I do that, and it's very not good. Okay, it's hyper imbalanced, all kinds of, sort of disturbing things. And so, like, well, but there's something else for me to sort of consume mentally, right? And I say, it's like Brussels sprouts because I like Brussels sprouts, but you could choose whatever vegetable you or what good thing you like, right? And so I go on a walk by the river by my house, and I think of that. Do you know that John O'Donohue book, Divine Beauty, The Invisible Embrace?
Right.
So he talks about how places and people, when they interact, they um, there's some sort of residue of memory of the feelings you had when you were there. And so I will go on a walk by the river. I see people, I see dogs and children, and everyone is happy for the most part. They're smiling. And I hope that some of the care and the love that we all feel there will stay there for other
Mm.
people.
Mm.
And so
Right, like
that's
perfuming that
my
space.
Brussels sprouts, right?
Right.
Right. As there's this short quote from that John O'Donohue book. He says, "Beauty does not linger, it only visits. Beauty's visitation affects us and invites us into its rhythm. It calls us to feel, think, and act beautifully in the world, to create and live a life that awakens the beautiful."
Mm. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Justine. And I love how you framed the way you described the idea of eating a thought. Like, oh, if I consume this thought of negativity, well, how does that make me feel? Like if it's like consuming a big plate of, fried food or something. How do you feel afterwards versus a cool glass of water? I like that. That's very true, I think, because we're consuming things on many, many levels all the time. Energies, concepts, regular food, atmospheres. So that's very helpful just to kind of remember, what am I consuming? What am I bringing in? And also the idea that energy rests in places, and that we can, and that's true. I mean, that's what a pilgrimage is all about, that energy resides in places where different kinds of actions have been performed, and that there can be all kinds of ways of being in relationship to that. So thank you, Justine. Rob here. Oh, okay.
Thank you. My name is Holly.
Hi,
and
Holly.
Hi, I'm here for the first time.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you for this wonderful talk. It was very helpful as a
Hmm.
whole. I practice Zen. I practiced Zen a long time, and I live 3 hours away, so I won't be here.
Okay.
But I wanted to respond to. I will be brief. I wanted to respond to. Well, there's quite a bit of ritual in the practice that I do.
Mm,
That's beautiful.
right.
But one thing I thought of in terms of practice in everyday life, of ritual, my granddaughter has insisted with her parents that everybody put away the weapon of mass distraction during a meal.
Yeah.
And so the cell phones are put away or silenced. And if somebody, one of her parents or her grandmother, touches it or goes for it, she will remind us
No, good for
that
her.
this is a sacred time to look at each other and share a meal together. So
Right.
that's beautiful. I'll say one last thing is I taught psychology for a long time, and I had my students, college students, insist that everybody at the table put away the phone for one meal, and then they talked about their experiences, and it was very interesting. I hope some of them are still doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you again for your
Oh,
talk.
thank you so much. And thank you for that reminder from your granddaughter.
Oh.
I do think that's a good practice for all of us now. We've all become so addicted to our devices. If you're having coffee with somebody in a coffee shop, put it away. Be in relationship with that being that you're with, Like, yeah, I feel very strongly about that. Thank you. So maybe if we have one more person from the Zoom screen, and then Rob is back here also. Anyone else from the virtual realm?
I see a hand,
We have Judith.
a real hand.
Judith.
Oh yes,
please
I see
unmute.
one too.
A real hand, I'm sorry.
I see a real hand too.
Techno turtle here. So I want to thank you very much. This is my first time joining all of you, and it was truly inspiring and lovely.
Welcome.
Thank you. I have a question about ritual, which I love the way you described it as reweaving. And I have been committing myself to a more slow rebellion. I'm not someone who loves crowds or protests. It's not what I feel comfortable with, but I love that human mycelium concept, and of how we continue to share what we love. If it's a singer, you sing. If it's an artist, you paint. And that those are, happiness is a way to rebel. And you mentioned South America. I'm getting into plants a whole lot more. I started a pollinating plant in my back driveway, which might not last, but I'm trying. You mentioned the South American plant medicine ceremony, and
Right.
I was wondering if you could just guide me somewhere that I could find more work like that at this point.
I mean, that's a big question.
Okay.
Because, and mainly because there are lots of directions one could go now. It's becoming such a thing that
Okay.
there are a lot of not very safe situations out there. So you want to be very careful to make sure that if you're going to engage, especially with traditional South American plant medicine work, that you have found a lineage that is intact, and it's not just some somebody who's done a couple of ceremonies and said, oh, I'm going to do this now, I'm going to serve medicine, and has no real connection to training of any real sort or lineage, to have done just a few journeys or psychedelic journeys and then suddenly decide that one can offer those medicines, I think is really not appropriate, irresponsible.
So are you referring to you're referring to psychedelic medicine, basically? Or
well, I'm referring to ayahuasca. Those are the kinds of plant medicine journeys I've been doing. So, ayahuasca is not a psychedelic, but it's got psychedelic properties. And this is a big conversation.
All right. No, I thought there were
anyhow, my point goes along those lines. Yes, but you meant something else.
I thought maybe there were just rituals of plants.
Oh. Well, there are. There's so many. Maybe we'll have a separate conversation about that. Thank you, though. Rob.
Thank you. Hi, this is Rob. This is somewhere between a question and a comment, but I feel a big part of this, something I struggle with on this question of fragmentation, is just the busyness of life.
Yeah.
And it's this sort of like, I don't want to overuse the word koan, but like, the fullness of life, there's so much to engage with, so many people we can give our attention to and situations to help out and things to do, right? I mean, it's Dartmouth's graduation today, and then I came over here, and then I've got to go talk to my father, and like we all have lives like this, which can feel very fragmented because there are these totally different contexts. But then part of what I'm taking from your wonderful talk is that, I mean, it's possible to be in all of these very different things without becoming fragmented somehow. But I guess I'm just naming and asking about and feeling that tension between the infinite potential of all the things that could take up our time and engaging in them wholeheartedly without fragmenting, feeling fragmented.
Right. Actually, I think that's just such a beautiful opening, what you just, because I think it's true. I think what I've come to is that the small self that is focused only on itself, the sort of the relative self maybe that we talk about in the Buddhist tradition, cannot hold the wholeness or the fullness. It can only hold parts. But our ultimate self, our awakened self, our deep nature self can hold everything in equality and without bias. And because the relative self and the ultimate self are not separate, that the journey is a way, really, I think the whole path is a path of beginning to discover that indescribable unity between the ultimate and the relative. And in that state, the wholeness is held, and the individuality and the appreciation of each distinction is still there. It's that discriminating awareness wisdom. That's one of the awakened wisdoms of the Buddha. But that's the path. But the way you described that just opened the door for me to say that so beautifully. Thank you. Well, how much later do you guys want to go? We're over time, but there are more questions on the screen in here. I'm willing to keep going for a little while if people want to go another 10 minutes. And if some people need to go, you can go, but all right, we'll keep going for a little longer. So back to the screen, and then is there anybody else from the virtual realm?
I don't see anyone at the moment, Lama Liz.
Okay. What's your name? Andrea. Andrea, and then maybe Bruce. I also had his hand. Andrea, if you could just use the microphone, then people online can hear you.
So my name is Andrea. I have a mix of spiritual paths between witchcraft, Norse, paganism, Celtic, and also I am from South America.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also a cacao ceremony facilitator.
Beautiful.
So to explain the lady before that she was asking about morning rituals with medicinal plants.
Right.
There is one that is not psychedelic at all, not like yahe or ayahuasca,
Right.
no mushrooms, nothing like that. It's just cacao ceremony.
Yeah.
Ceremonial grade cacao. You can make it every morning. That's what I make as a ritual. It's every morning fasting. That's the first thing you drink. And it's based just on criollo cacao from normally Peru, Colombia, Ecuador. And you mix 25 grams of that with 150 of water, 85 Celsius, with 10 grams of panela. Panela is a typical, very raw, pure sugar from South America, and a pinch of chili.
Mm.
You mix that, you leave it infused. You don't need to boil it. You just leave it infused like if it's a tea. Then you froth it, and then you go to a sacred space you call the goddess Ish Cacao. Goddess Ish Cacao will bring you comfort, self-love, compassion, strength, on top of the healing on the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual way. So it's very gentle. Yet, if you do this as a ritual every day, you can't drink coffee whatsoever. Because in the chemistry of cacao with coffee, it will clash each other, so you can actually harm yourself. Because cacao works on the bloodstream, whilst coffee does it on the nervous system. So the difference is huge, and cacao is more gentle. It will last in between 6 to 10 hours, so it's far better to cacao. But the other thing is you can't eat more chocolate or cacao during the day, because that is the maximum dose that you can take. So it's a nice ritual if you want to call, for example, the goddess is Ish Cacao. But you can call whoever you want. And in that sacred moment, while you hold the cup in between your hands and by yourself, and you just meditate on that cup of cacao. That is a ritual. I do it every morning, and it's very good.
Thank you so much. That's a beautiful description. And I have cacao every morning too. It's my first thing. But the way you just described that and laid out the ritual, I hope that I'm sorry I missed your name on the screen. Judith, that Judith was at. There's one right there, Judith. The cacao plant is incredible. Ceremonial grade. Yeah. No, right. Right. Okay. Thank you, Andrea. And there is a hand up now on our screen, and then Bruce will come back to you.
Ginger. Oh, I can't hear you. Ginger, I'm not sure if your audio is connected, but I can't hear you.
Maybe we'll go to Bruce here, and then they can try and figure out if they can get that to work.
Yeah.
Okay. Bruce?
Hi, Bruce. I'm going to try to be very quick. I like what the person over there who's not here right now said. When you meet an old person, you don't ask them how old they are, you ask them how young they are. And it changes the whole dynamic. Yes, the world's a terrible place. It's scary. It's awful. And people are really suffering. But what I tell friends is it's a wake-up call, and you sort of referred to this. It's a wake-up call to love even more. And whether you love your kids, your spouse, your friends, give them an extra bit of love. Give yourself an extra bit of love. If you don't have anybody, love nature more. But I really think that out of something terrible going on in the world, something positive, and it's a wake-up call. And for me, it really gets me through.
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah. Did that work up there for... I can see you're trying to unmute, but is it actually working? No.
No, we can't hear you.
I'm so sorry, but we probably need to, yeah.
I have a very quick end of the day ritual.
Okay, yes.
So when I go to bed, I say I'm laying my head down on the pillow with gratitude. And then I run through my mind all the beings that I came in contact with during the day, whether I know them or not, whether it's faces or names, and just anything that happened in the day that brings gratitude. So I'll be laying on my pillow in gratitude tonight.
Thank you, Karen. I mean, and gratitude is such a powerful energy to cultivate in our lives. It changes everything. It changes everything. And on that note, then we're going to do a final little closing ritual here on page 15 in the chant book here, and then we're going to do a dedication ritual, which is very simple and very often done in the Buddhist tradition. Everybody knows this, but whatever benefit has come out of our time together, we're going to offer it out into the world. And the articulation of that in this bodhicitta dedication prayer is an offering of bodhicitta. Bodhi means awakened, and citta means heart. So it's sending out energy into the world so that all beings may have their hearts awaken in love. So let's just take a minute first just to really feel that as an intention and a motivation, an energy that you're releasing into the world. Changchup Semcho Rinpoche Mache Panam Che Jerchi Che Pa Nyam Pa Me Pa Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Pelwar Shou. May the pure, brilliant sun of bodhicitta dawn in each and every heart and mind, dispelling the darkness of suffering and confusion unstoppably until all are fully illumined and awakened. Thank you so much, everyone, for your patience since we went 10 minutes over. Wonderful to be here with all of you. And those of you here at Wonderwell, there's a potluck. Please stick around if you can, enjoy. And everyone at home, I hope you have your own personal potluck lunch or just lunch that you enjoy. We'll see you all again. Thank you so much.